Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Cabblow Studios Business of Animation podcast, the podcast that is dedicated to helping budding animation entrepreneurs create financially sustainable businesses while also maintaining personally fulfilling creative careers. My name is Cabblow, I am your host, and this is episode 4. So I've been going round and around and around in my head. Oh wait, I feel like there's a song that goes like that. I've been going round and round and round in my head trying to figure out how to name this episode because I wanted to talk about, I guess it's two sides of the same coin. So I was like, do I name this episode "This Is Not Cute" or do I name this episode the blessing of not having a template? And I thought, let's just use both names because it really is the same. It's the same coin but two different sides. So what I was thinking about in this episode is about all the times when doing animation, doing a business in animation is challenging, and the times where it's not as pleasant as you kind of imagine. And you can see I'm actually avoiding using the word disillusionment because I don't like to think that people get disillusioned, although we do. But I think what I'm trying to say is I don't want to talk from that place because then it's like you expect for life to lose wonder and excitement and mystery and beauty and whatever. So it's more like the times when you kind of get a reality check. And the interesting thing about, the concept of a reality check is a lot of the time when people use the phrase reality check, it's always in a negative context. But I actually think that a reality check can be a positive thing, where yes, something happens in your life and you get a realization that whatever it is that you imagined or whatever it is you expected to happen in your life is different from the lived reality of that thing. But it could be positive or negative. So for example, if we're thinking about it in a negative sense, then it's like something bad happens and then you get a reality check. But I think you can also think about it in a positive sense where something happens and you realize something about yourself which you hadn't appreciated before if this particular thing happened, whether positive or negative. And so then in that way, a reality check then becomes not just the times when you have a rude awakening and something bad happens, but you also have a shift in your perspective. Because I think as humans, it's so easy for us to look at ourselves and look at the negative things instead of appreciating the positive things. Which brings me to the other side of my coin, which is talking about how not having a template is a blessing. And maybe blessing is not the word that most people use or whatever, but it's just to say that it's like actually a good thing and it's actually an empowering thing. So let me actually tell a story because then maybe that will help me give context to why this episode is titled the way that it is. Earlier this year, and we're still living through the pandemic. It's November, it's wild. But earlier this year, we had a new client, and I needed to draw up a quotation for that client. And before, when I was still learning how to price everything for Cabblow Studios, it was very overwhelming, and it really used to give me a headache because I was like, how much does this cost? What is the value of animation? It was very difficult to kind of pinpoint what's the best way to charge people. How do I make sure that I'm competing in the market, but also am charging fairly and taking into consideration my level of experience, but also the quality that we produce, etc., whatever. And I've gotten to a place now where I'm a lot more comfortable deciding how to charge, even if I am still learning. And as I was like putting this quotation together, before I used to be really scared that, am I overcharging? Am I undercharging? Are people gonna, run away because maybe it's quote unquote too expensive or whatever? But as I was drawing up this quotation, I realized that nobody can do what we do at Cabblow Studios the way we do it. And so the way that I charge customers, it's not to overvalue ourselves or whatever it might be, but it is considering that we have a certain method in which we create our animations. We've got a certain style. When we present it to the client, we have a certain process when we work with them week by week to make sure that the animation gets done. And all of those things, nobody taught me. Nobody gave me a template and said, this is how you do an animation business. This is how you work with clients. This is how you make sure you receive you have the same result every time. I had to learn those things. We had to learn those things and teach ourselves. And I really came to appreciate that because I didn't have a template, because I didn't have somebody saying, this is how you do or don't do an animation business, I had the freedom to actually charge clients the true value of the work that we do, because I'm not limited by someone else's example. So what I want to do now is actually talk about all the ways that running your own animation business and all of that is actually not cute. And then I will then flip it over and talk about the positive side of things. So I actually made a list, and I was like, what actually hasn't been cute about all of this? And I started all the way from the beginning, where I received unhelpful or discouraging feedback. And what I mean by that is, it isn't to say that you should never receive criticism, because you will, and that if you take something personally, then you're a terrible person. No, you're a human, and you put a lot of yourself into your work. So even when people are criticizing the work, sometimes we do take it personally, and that's fine. It's just something that you have to always remember to overcome. But when I say unhelpful or discouraging feedback, it does take me back to my film school days, which I do talk about quite a bit on the podcast. And I think about some of the lecturers who would give us feedback for our projects. For the most part, a lecturer is not really trying to make you feel small. Their job is to make sure that they produce good students, right? So sometimes a lecturer would look at a piece of animation that we've created as a team and give feedback that doesn't actually help you think about why your animation is or isn't achieving a specific goal. So I remember we would get feedback like, I remember I would present an animatic, so a rough cut of the animation while it's still in storyboard form. And I would present that because the lecturing staff kept giving story notes, ways for the story to improve. So as an animation person, I know that I'm not going to animate and then afterwards somebody's going to tell me my story doesn't make sense. I'm going to show you the storyboard so you can tell me my story does or doesn't make sense, so that I can improve the storyboard. And once the storyboard makes sense, then I just animate it, because animation is a formality, So I didn't write down these points, but it used to be feedback like, I don't understand why it's not colored in. I remember there was a line of feedback like that. And I was like, how does that help me make my animation better? Or it was feedback like, like I remember one project I did called The Cave, we designed a rhino, but it was like a prehistoric magical rhino, so it doesn't necessarily have to look like the real thing, style wise. And I remember the lecturer was like, oh, you could have made the rhino like a real rhino. But then he couldn't elaborate as to why stylistically it makes more sense to design the rhino closer to the real representation of an animal, as opposed to a stylized version that is in kind of like a cartoony animated style. And even now, like, I haven't written down examples, but even you, as you're listening, you've had moments where someone has given unhelpful feedback, where it's not feedback that is helping you improve on whatever it is you're doing. It's feedback that either adds confusion or feedback that is unnecessarily negative. And the reason why that was not a cute part of the process is because, number one, nobody likes for their things to be criticized because you put so much of your heart into your work. But number two, because unhelpful feedback adds more confusion than clarity. And when you're trying to learn something, what you're trying to do is have your brain make sense of the thing that you're learning. So in film school, it was a challenge having teachers who, and this isn't all of them, this just has to do with the animation part of my film school journey. My other lecturers were actually pretty okay. My editing and I always feel like I have to add that caveat. My editing lecturers, my script writing lecturers, producing, whatever, music, they were okay. It was whenever we were getting feedback on the animation, it was not always the strongest piece of feedback, and it didn't help me have clarity about what it was I was doing. It, as a young person, you sometimes you get confused because you feel like, oh, my seniors know more than me, I should listen to them. But what I learned from that experience is that sometimes people who do hold that senior position in your life and they give you feedback, sometimes you don't have to take it, especially if it's not helping you get to your desired goal, your desired outcome, right? You don't actually have to take their feedback. Now, it isn't to say you should be disrespectful and not listen to people who are giving you advice because they have experience, but it does mean that when you're back in your home, in your room, and looking at your project and looking at how to make it better, you don't have to take in that feedback and try to incorporate it. You can disregard it. And for me, thinking back to that experience, it's made me realize that the people who did give feedback and consistently gave feedback that was not helpful, it was because they did not have much context within animation to pull from in order to give me feedback that would help my projects improve. They just weren't animation people. They didn't understand the process. They didn't understand the thinking that people who produce animation follow. And so they couldn't give feedback that then helped the process. And that's okay. I have peace about that now. Something else that has been not cute is rejection. And in that way, it's, when a potential client approaches you about working on their project and for whatever reason they disappear on you in the middle of discussions, or you have gone through the effort of pricing their project and thinking about, if you were to do this project, how long it would take you, how many people would need to work on it, and all of the logistics of making the animation happen. And you send through your quotation. For me, it was very, it was sad every time somebody said, sorry, we can't work with you, you're too expensive, and I was like, am I overcharging? What is the international benchmarks? Because it's not like you suck prices out of your thumb. A diligent person does their research, right? You go online, you talk to your peers, you find out how much it costs you to actually set up your studio. So your equipment, your computers, your software, your other hardware like your drawing tablets, how many hours it takes to do your animations. If you've got people who you've hired who are freelancers or staff who you pay salaries, how much they have to earn every month. How much it costs for your internet connection so that you can upload these files to wherever the client asks you to upload them. If you have an office space, how much it costs to be in that office, how much your furniture costs. You think about all of the costs of your business. Now, I'm not saying every time you make an animation, someone is paying for your table, but the table is necessary because the desktop sits on the table. So anyway, so it was like I would take it hard when people would reject my quotations, because it takes so much brain power to finally make sense of the business side of an animation, that when somebody says, sorry, it's not for me, you kind of take it hard. At least that's how it was for me. And I think how I've been able to get past that is, first of all, you get used to it, because not everyone is gonna say no. And it over time it stings less, even with 3 teaspoons of sugar, we've entered it into a lot of different film festivals, but some of them send emails back saying, sorry, you weren't selected, but you can still come to the festival. And at first, even with 3 teaspoons of sugar, I'd be like, did I make a really rubbish film? But actually, the truth of it is not that your work and the quality of your work is poor, or that you are too expensive or too cheap or whatever it might be. What it means is that the thing that you have is not a right fit for that particular customer. And what it means is that you just have to keep pivoting until you find the right kind of customer. And the right kind of customer does show up if you don't give up, if you continue improving, if you keep seeking out the right kind of customer. Thanks for listening to the Business of Animation podcast. You can get original merchandise from our short film 3 Teaspoons of Sugar on our online store at the link in the description. It's www.hellopretty.co.za/Cabblow Studios. And we've got other merchandise as well, like zines and cups and t-shirts and tote bags. It's a lot of fun times. And of course, if you want to watch 3 Teaspoons of Sugar, you can watch 3 Teaspoons of Sugar on Vimeo, just on Vimeo on demand, or on Quelly TV. And of course, all of the links will be in the show notes / description and wherever else notes are found in a podcast. Thank you so much. Now back to the episode. And that's also how you establish your unique place in the market, by continuing to find the right customer. So when I talk about medical animation, for example, with Cabblow Studios, we have found people who fit well with us, and it came from different interactions, whether it's emailing our network and introducing them to medical animation, or if it's sitting and pitching people a project and they say, oh, we like this, can you do this for us? Or if it's a previous client then talks to their network and says, dude, you need to talk to Cabblow Studios, they do this thing, and they did this thing for me and it was great. And then that's also how our work starts to speak for itself and attract new clients. So that's one thing that hasn't been cute. Rejection, and I mean, I think it's a human thing, nobody likes not being liked. But the way you overcome that is realizing that you are not for everyone and everyone is not for you, but you will find your people, and I suppose you could extrapolate that and apply it really to any aspect of your life where there is a risk of rejection. It's not that you are a terrible person. And if you are a terrible person, then you know why you're terrible and you need to improve. But it's not that you're a terrible person. It's that your product, your service is not a right fit for that particular customer. And so it's just about finding the right customer. So something else that has not been cute about working in animation and trying to do my own business is the confusion around pricing, which I've mentioned before. And what I will say about this is that it's not that you can't ever find prices online, but it is that value is such an abstract concept. And when you put a price on a service or a product, you are trying to give material representation to this abstract concept called value. And that's why it's difficult, because it's like, do I charge this much? Do I charge that much? Here is my my take on it, and it might not be it might not give you the warm fuzzies to hear this, but here's my take. It's that no one is going to tell you how to value your product or service. Only you can do that. Which is like, Cabblow, I thought you were gonna tell me this is how much I should make my animation cost. Nope. Nobody is going to tell you how to value your product or service. Only you can do that. And how you do that is by going through the difficult journey of figuring out what is or isn't appropriate for your product or service. Which means, and I'll just tell you the things I've done, which means, so researching online and looking for like benchmarks. And that could be using websites like payscale.com. It could be just, typing in Google, how much does it cost to insert product or service, and seeing the results that come up. It's also accepting that when you Google these things online, most likely you will find American pricing or European pricing, and you'll just have to deal with the fact that that is what's coming at you, and how do you make that appropriate in your country. The other thing that you can do, which I've seen some people do, which I haven't done before, but is if you're on like different professional Facebook groups, or if you're a person who uses like forums, like I guess Reddit, although I've never used Reddit, so I'm not sure, but you can ask on forums, hey, I have a client, I want to charge this much, is this appropriate? These are the things that I want to include in this package. What do you guys think? And if you're in one of these groups where they do a lot of sharing of information, like these creative groups on Facebook or something, a lot of the time people will respond and say, oh, I charge this much, or oh no, you're undercharging, or well, it depends on how many hours, and it depends on this. People will give you things to think about. But at the end of the day, no one is going to make the decision for you. And so you have to make that first decision to price something and say, this is how much it costs for X amount of animation, for this kind of style, for this kind of delivery date, and this is how the process is going to be. You actually have to sit and make that decision and be okay with the outcome that comes. A client might come back to you and say, perfect, let's get started. And so then that will either tell you one of two things, that you've hit the sweet spot and the pricing that you have is good, or you've undercharged and you need to price more. And we've had this happen at Cabblow Studios, we had someone who approached us who was like, hey, can you do this for me? I did the timeline, I did the quotation. Then they came back and said, no, sweetie, your thing is too expensive. You're going to take too many days. The client didn't understand that with animation, at least the way we do things at Cabblow Studios, a lot of things are happening at the same time. So if I'm designing a character, maybe someone else is storyboarding and somebody else is doing background design. Like, things happen at the same time. They're not happening one after the other because we have a team. Maybe if I was one person, the things have to happen one after the other because I'm one person. So that person didn't understand, and they're like, oh, you're overcharging, you're overcharging. And I did so many quotations where a lot of people are like, oh, we love your idea, but this is too expensive. Or we love your idea, but our budgets are closed for the year. Or we love your idea, but we're just not in a place where we can pay for such things. You know, it's not a necessity, whatever. Until you get that one client, that first client that says yes. And we did have that, and we had the client, and we realized, okay, this is a good place to start pricing our projects. And from that client, we kind of use them as a benchmark to say to future clients, here's what we made for this price. This is where we start. What you want to make would be more in the price range of X amount. And as we've been improving, we've been changing our prices to match the quality of the work that the clients ask for. And I've also had situations where I charged the client something, and I realized, and maybe I told them it would take me 2 weeks to do, but then it took me 3 weeks to do, or it took me 2 weeks, but then I had to work on the weekends and all night, and I had to do all-nighters to make sure I handed on time. So those moments where you realize, oh, this is more work than I thought, then that's when you realize, okay, I should have priced it higher so that the value for the work matches the value that I'm getting matches the output that I'm giving. And yeah, so it's nobody's gonna tell you how to value your work. You have to make that decision. And it's not nice for somebody not to give you a warm and fuzzy response, but that is, at least for me, the truth of the thing, that I've had to sit and say, okay, this is how much it cost Cabblow Studios to get to where it is. This is how much we would like to make for our projects. This is the kind of quality of work that we do. This is how we'll charge our clients. And you can see I'm not mentioning any numbers because everyone's context is different. And maybe, maybe I might get criticized. Maybe I should have said some numbers, but I feel like it is better to leave it more open-ended in that way. So I hope that helps. Okay, I want to talk about maybe one or two more things that weren't cute, and then I want to flip it over and talk about some positive stuff. So some other things that haven't been cute about this whole journey has been having to work multiple jobs and just making mistakes with clients. So before 2020, in 2018 and 2019, I was not just working on Cabblow Studios. I had other jobs, which included teaching at high school, like doing their after-school extracurricular program. I was doing an animation extracurricular program at my old high school. I was also doing private tutoring on Saturdays, which I really enjoy. And I was also lecturing at a university full time. And then in the evenings, I would work as a freelance animator or colorist. Or I'd be working on whatever Cabblow Studios project we're working on in the evening. Those times were very difficult. And those times were very difficult because I was working multiple jobs and feeling very stretched and very drained. But I do appreciate those times because they showed me just how capable of a person I am, how hardworking of a person I am. And it did help to have multiple streams of income so that I wasn't just earning from the full-time jobs. I was also earning from other parts of the work that I was doing, whether it was teaching or whether it was the tutoring or whether it was the extramural or whether it was the full-time job or whether it was the earnings that Cabblow Studios was getting from the small projects that we would do for people. And I would work full time Monday to Friday, and then come home from work, and then in the evenings work on the freelance things or the Cabblow Studios projects. On Fridays I would teach at the high school, and then on Saturdays I would do the tutoring. It was hard. It was hard because you feel like a crazy person, and you feel drained and stretched. But it did show me that I am that kind of person who, if I have to do 5 jobs in order to make sure my life is sustained, I will do 5 jobs, so that wasn't cute about the process. Right now with Cabblow Studios, I'm doing Cabblow Studios full time because, partly because there was a pandemic, so teaching in physical places didn't make sense. It was better to teach virtually, but also because Cabblow Studios, because it was picking up a lot of momentum after 3 teaspoons of sugar, it just needed more time. Otherwise, it was just always going to stay a side hustle, which that's not what I want it to be. That's not the vision of the studio. So right now, I am doing Cabblow Studios full time, and we've really increased our productivity as a studio overall, because now I'm not spending half of my day at a full-time job elsewhere. I'm spending most of my day on Cabblow Studios. So just for those of you out there who are doing multiple jobs and trying to make your dreams of having an animation business happen, just know my heart is there with you. I get it. I get how hard it is. I get how you have so many things you want to do, but sometimes you're limited with the time that you have, and also just how sometimes you just feel so stretched. You don't know how much of yourself you have left to give to whatever it is you're trying to do. Just know I'm there with you, and that it ends. It does end. Now, will I never not do multiple jobs? I will do a lot of different things, because even in Cabblow Studios, we've got our client projects that we do. We've got our original projects that we do. We've got like this podcast. This is not exactly an animation, but it is something that we do at Cabblow Studios. So there's a lot of things that are happening even inside of Cabblow Studios, where sometimes I also feel stretched when there's more than one project happening at the same time. And and each project is at a different phase. Maybe one project's in storyboard phase, another project we're in post-production, another project we're writing a script, another project we're pitching it elsewhere. So there's like lots of things happening, but I guess that's how the machine keeps moving, because there's pieces that are keeping the machine moving. And in that way, I'm grateful to have that kind of problem, because it is a positive problem. Okay, I just want to get back to the positive aspect of the podcast before I finish. In all of the things that I've said, which I feel like I've been talking for a while, and today's podcast is maybe a bit more heartfelt than information heavy like the one I did in the previous episode. But just to kind of bring it all together, in going through this journey of Cabblow Studios, it has really taught me that... No, that's not how I want to summarize it. Just to come back to the positive aspects of this episode, it's to say that a template is a good thing. A template is a guide. A template shows you where to start and how to get going. But a template can be a source of frustration if you try to stick too closely to the template without acknowledging your own unique sensibilities and your own unique way of solving problems. That is why I say not having a template is actually a blessing, because yes, in the beginning, it's so hard. It's a blank page. Where do you start? How do you put it all together? How do you make it make sense? But in doing that, you actually start to, embrace your own way of thinking, your own way of solving problems. And in that way, you start to create something that is custom built for you and your business and your process, which no one else can ever teach you. No one can ever teach you how to be you or think like you. Only you do that because you've been doing that your whole life, you know. So for me at Cabblow Studios, and it comes back to that small story where I was quoting somebody, and I was like, I'm so glad that I'm in a place where I can recognize that nobody can do what we do the way that we do it. And at the end of the day, I sent in that quotation, I sent in all the things that we said we would do for the client, and the client said, yeah, let's go for it. And even after working with them on that particular project, they came back and asked for more things, which is also then a confirmation that I was right to choose to do things how we do things and how we've been developing our process, because it makes us stand out and find the right kind of client to work with us. So just as a word of encouragement for you, don't allow yourself to stay discouraged when you find yourself in a space where you're going through the process of building your studio and it's just like it's not cute, like things are hard, and they're just like not getting easier. This is part of the process, you know. It is hard, it is not cute, but if you keep at it, you will start to find your own rhythm and find your own way of doing things. And in that way, you also give other people another example of how something can get done, right? And that's why I say, and that's also like the beauty of a template, right? There's more than one kind of template. And in seeing different examples of how to make it in animation, you give whoever is up and coming, you give them more options and more ways of thinking about how to solve their problems, which is all that I'm doing. I'm not trying to get everyone to do things like how we do things, because that doesn't make any sense. Everyone is different. But if I can also then give my example forward and say, hi guys, this is me, this is how we do things, here's another way of thinking about it, the next person will say, okay, Cabblow Studios does this, DreamWorks does this, Nickelodeon does that, Chromosphere does the other thing. This is how I would like to do things. And then in that way we grow our industry and we allow people to be who they are and create a unique space for themselves in the market. So yeah, that's me. That's the episode. I feel like today's episode was a bit more heartfelt and not so much information heavy. The next episode will probably go back to being like a bit more information heavy. So with that, I just want to say, stay safe wherever you are. If you're in the middle of another lockdown, just know, my heart goes out to you, because this is so crazy. We've been at home all year. And we've been living through a pandemic. But the beautiful thing is you are still alive and I'm still alive. So yeah, stay safe, social distance, wash your hands, all of those beautiful things, and have a happy day wherever you are in the world. Bye.